Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first session of the November C3EB Summit with Amit Bhambi. And before we get into an introduction with Amit, just a quick thank you message to our sponsors. So here. All right, and let's do this. Welcome to the first session of the C3EB Summit, and I am so excited about this session. There seems to be a little bit of lag, but I'm hoping it will resolve itself because there's nothing we can do about it. So in this session, we have Amit Bhambi, who is the CEO of 30 Friends and the founder of 30 Friends, a platform built to key new people and create meaningful connections. He has his MBA from Wharton and is a former consultant with McKinsey and Company before he founded his firm, Bhambi and Associates. Amit is a leader, and technically, actually, it's Bhambi, but Amit is a leader with experience across multiple industries and a track record of success in growth strategy and operational excellence. If you are watching this live or later, did I just freeze up?
I think you're back.
Oh, perfect. If you are watching this live or later, please make sure you click on the ticker, on the URL in the ticker and sign in for Amit's session. And that's just www.c3eb.com/speaker/Amit-Bhambi. That's AMIT-BHAMBI. So without further ado, Amit, welcome to the C3EB Summit.
AJ, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And my thing is frozen. Sorry about the technical difficulties. Give me 2 seconds. All right, and we're back. Sorry about that. And Amit, take it away, please.
Hey, there's no better way to get started than getting the technical difficulties out of the way. AJ, thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here at the C3EB Summit, and wanted to talk a little bit today about 30 Friends, the mission we're on, but I think most importantly about why this all comes to be and why it's important. And I think it really stems from a couple of core questions that I want to get into around, what's the gap in how we're connecting virtually today? And then talking a little bit through what it really takes to meet new people in an online space. And finally, how to actually make this a journey for everyone, that people want to join that conversation and be part of it, because really all of us are struggling with this today. We're all kind of caught remotely and virtually, and I think this is the new paradigm we're going to get used to as we move into the coming months and years. But let me get started by saying a little bit about myself. I think AJ said quite a bit, but I originally born in the UK, grew up in the Boston area, and now I'm here in Southern California, Orange County. Spent my career across a number of different things, but started in Boston at Northeastern University, and stayed there for a while after graduating with my MIS degree. Started my first job over at State Street, and furthered my education later on in life at Wharton and got my MBA at Wharton, and with a focus in entrepreneurship and innovation. Professionally, I decided a long time ago I really just like solving problems. Even when I was a kid, loved those little Rubik's cubes, and so McKinsey and Company is where I headed to start solving some of these problems. Left there, started my own consulting firm, focused again on how do you get from strategy to execution. Started Bhambi and Associates, and most recently it's been about 30 friends. How do we connect people in this this new world that we're going to be living in? But in a nutshell, I think a large part of my career has been about leading, coming up with strategy, and most importantly, understanding where to take risk and how to take risk. And I think that's exactly what I'm doing today. And I think all of us are learning to do to some degree, whether we like it or not. So what's the problem? What's going on in the world? People they have a new expectation for how they're going to be socializing, what that social experience looks like. And I think that virtual interaction, it's growing. It's been growing, both in colleges, organizations, events like this, which would have been done in person. But it's been accelerated due to COVID-19. This is not because of COVID. I think that this is just, driving us years into the future. But they're driving these questions of now, how do I create a network? And how do we build a real sense of community? Or, it's college is not just about education, for example, it's about meeting new people. So you're seeing these large pools of people saying, how do we do virtual gatherings? And as the organizations talk more and more about this, 34% have said that they're going to be remote until 2022 or forever. And you see the posts all the time online saying virtual is going to be our new kind of MO. But, this is causing its own problems. So with virtual comes a number of different issues. People just don't have a great way to create this network with classmates or colleagues or just new people in general. When we look at online connection, there's a lot of distraction. When you're online, it's really hard to, stay focused on that conversation. It has a lot of impacts on mental health, creates this feeling of isolation. And, people are already feeling isolated. And you see numbers like 30%, staggering numbers of folks that already felt lonely. And this is pre-COVID-19. So you can imagine how this is just continuing to grow and becoming a larger problem. And lastly, that there's just no real sense of community. So where we naturally would have been forming bonds, excuse me, we're just not able to do that today. So we've moved to different forums, and a lot of them are kind of leaving us in a lurch and not really feeling that need for us. But outside of kind of the individual level, there's a systemic issue that this presents to organizations as well. Community is really a huge hub of how organizations build morale, create more teamwork, increase productivity and retention. And this is not, we're in a meeting and we're all together on this. It's the water cooler talk and seeing people at lunch. And what happens is that we're able to meet our colleagues. We're able to foster those collaborations and break down the silos in our organization, because I met Susie from engineering, and she can tell me a little bit about what's going on. And all of a sudden I start making those connections of here's how these folks really are playing together. And it's been very difficult to do this before we were all separated, even harder now that we're virtual. And you hear it time and time again, both from existing employees and especially with new employees. How do I engage with folks? How am I going to connect with these people? And so we have hosted events, in the past that it's all about improving employee connection to each other and leadership and helping people to meet new people and break those silos down. Really, it's about being inclusive. Let's get people involved and let's have them feel a sense of connection to everyone around them. So let's talk a little bit about the gap. As we look at virtual connection, there's a lot of stuff out there. If you kind of stay on the far left of this one, we talk about things like meeting and learnings. There's great applications out there for this. This is the one-to-many. I'm going to share what I'm doing, and folks are going to listen, and we're going to have some sense of interconnection. But Zoom, Teams are doing a great job of kind of tackling this formal communication. And I'm going to skip over to the far right over here, and you start talking about strengthening connections. And this is where I already know folks. I know the 6 people I'm going to get together with, or I have this is a group of colleagues I already know, so we're going to get on a call together, and house party, and think about the social aspects here. You can do it on Zoom, but right there in the middle is the gap. How do I create new relationships? How do I grow my network, whether that be my friend network or my professional network? There are no great active ways of doing this. And I'll talk a little bit about how this is done today, whether it's a great solution or not, but really, you're seeing a lot of solutions being plugged in here that don't necessarily meet the need. And these are things like Facebook and LinkedIn, where I can go through and add 1,000 friends. And the question then becomes, are any of these connections that are real connections that have a meaningful connection to me, or am I just adding kind of numbers on here? So that's kind of the big gap that we started going out to tackle, was how do we address this? And we've talked to universities and organizations and a number of different folks that are trying to do this, and really recognizing the means that exist today are they're just a little bit subpar. And even things like Slack. I use Slack. It's a great mode of communication, but you lose 92% of your message, because 7 to 8% of your message is what you're actually writing. The rest is all about the audio and visual piece that goes along with it. So what's missing then, right? What's missing from these solutions? Why are they not working? And we talk about it in a couple of buckets: functionality, structure, a place. And I'll talk about what that really means: real connection, diversity, and inclusion. I think that some folks are doing a great job of tackling pieces of this. Functionality is a great example. A lot of folks, they jump on functionality and how am I connecting into that, and what's that functionality look like? And it's really important, but they're building it for their purpose. The functionality, if you're connecting with one another, is about having a forum to meet, having a way to share information about how we can stay in touch going further, and how we actually functionally are going to have that conversation. It's very, very simple, actually. It's just a matter of what piece do you want to double click in on. A place, when I talk about a place, this is about how we formulate connections. Connections are formulated through meeting folks on repetition. It's not about the network itself, but the number of networks you're part of. So having a common space that you can go to and you can kind of go back and forth into is an important part of actually developing a relationship and being able to really tackle the problem of what it really takes to meet new people. One that folks kind of back down from is structure. I'm a big fan of structure. You'll hear me talk about it over and over again, but a lot of folks say, I will create a place, or I will create some functionality, and people will come and they're going to figure it all out. I think that in and of itself is a misnomer. I think that really what we're saying is that we need to create some structure. I think naturally we create structure and we find that. So I'll talk about this in forms of a happy hour. In a happy hour, we think we're walking into a space and it's an open forum and I'm going to do what I want to do. Realistically, we automatically kind of created this structure of, I'm going to come into a room, I'll survey that room, I'll join a group, I'll break off and I'll join a new group, and I'll break off and I'll join a new group. But this structure exists. So why are we shying away from it? When we go online, we get very scared that we're leading people too much, but structure is an important part of creating real connection. And real connection is why we need things like these forums today, why we use Zoom so often. We're in place of what we would have texted or used phone for in the past. That we want to create that connection and an interconnection with people that video has allowed us to do, and the infrastructure that's available today is great. The last two pieces around diversity and inclusion really are about, when I speak about them here, diversity is the fact that we ourselves are diverse. We're not a single facet here. I love sports, but that doesn't mean that's all I want to talk about. I love sports, I love pets, I love talking about entrepreneurship, but it doesn't mean all of this is together, but they are all pieces of me. So how do I tackle some of that, and how do we allow folks to kind of embrace that? And inclusion is really about how we engage the people around us And I think that these two really fall hand in hand, that if you can identify how to address diversity, you find inclusion by finding homophily with folks, basically birds of a feather flock together, and you can find the common point to build off of. So, this is what we went after and said, look, when we talk about how to make people feel like they're included, how to make people feel like they want to join in on the conversation. Let's talk about the reason people feel excluded, right? Well, there's a lack of inclusion. They feel nervous. They get lost in the conversation. You can imagine these large Zoom calls. It's 50 people, 80 people. The ship has sailed. You come in 10 minutes late. I mean, there's a lot of reasons. You just get lost. You feel like you don't fit in because it's maybe just not the right group for you. Or folks make you feel excluded because they all want to talk about something and you want to talk about something else. And honestly, you just get bored. So what that, you've all kind of seen it, right? You're on a call. It's supposed to be 2-hour-long happy hour, an hour-long happy hour on Zoom. 20 minutes into it, you're checking email and someone else is off somewhere else. And, there's 6 people talking in a room of 50, or you're doing breakouts. And it's the same idea where, you can't wait for it to be over. So what we've kind of tried to do is even ground first, right? This is an important thing. People kind of come in, they're nervous because I'm looking for X and you're looking for Y and we're not on the same page. You want to get everyone off to even footing. So when you talk about getting people engaged, if we all know we're here for the same purpose, to meet new people and create real connections, it's going to automatically put us a little bit at ease, because now I'm talking to Joe and Susie, and we're all kind of there for the same purpose. The next piece is around matching, right? This is going to help us address fitting in. So rather than join a group that's, hey, it's a free for all, everyone come in, we all join because we want to talk about, something like the C3B Summit, where we want to talk about inclusion, where we want to talk about, bringing people together. Great. Now we're all on the same page. We are all matched up and are thinking about connecting on a similar topic. Direction is about the structure. And when we talk about being bored and change, so is change. So I think the structure is all about, how do we now guide the conversation? You're here for the same purpose. You all are talking about the same topic. Let's create now a way for you to have that conversation in a meaningful way without you getting bored. So this is the way we started looking at the problem. And I think this is the way that we've seen the problem, both from a corporate side, from a university side, from an individual side. And with the holidays just around the corner, you can imagine this is forefront of people's mind. But we decided to start figuring out, now, how do I tackle the problem? So tackling the problem looks like this to us. It's really about, how do we create a sense of finding common interests, keeping that conversation going, and getting these big groups together. And I'll come back and forth to this a little bit, but really, when we've talked about this in the past, it's really been through the lens of, there are common interests that we want to find with people. So let's create a common space. And that space might be for everyone that's in Southern California or in Boston or in Michigan. And within that space, let's create some subtopics that people are really interested in. And then again, we talk about things like sports and fitness, and you can kind of click into one of these areas. And now you're in this group with folks. You have a couple of points to connect with them on. The next thing is to keep that conversation going. So I see a room, there's a bunch of people there, they seem interesting enough. I want to now engage those people, and I can't do it in a 100-person group. So let's move you away from that, and let's let you know it's finite. So for the next 15 minutes, we're going to talk to a group of 5 to 6 people, no more. Because in a 6-person conversation, we can actually talk. And along with that, I'm going to give you the tools to be successful in your conversation. So when we talk about these connections, the way that we've been looking at it is this: creating connections with new people and making them meaningful breaks down to these 5 pieces of the flow. But let's keep it interesting. What's the most interesting thing that we can kind of create for these virtual communities to keep them excited. What are the topic areas? What gets them jazzed? And we are talking to companies today, and we say, great, we can sit here and we can have a general happy hour, and that's good. But let's have some of these other topics that folks really want to get into, right? So, we've been having conversations with organizations about creating groups that are based on affinity groups, or that are based on topics that the organization is tackling at that time. The other thing that we talk about a lot is just more fun in groups. Doing one-on-one conversations, it makes it hard. We go back to this point of feeling nervous and feeling awkward. You put someone one-on-one, there's not that ability to build off of other people's conversations. So we really focus on how do you do this in a group. The next piece here is about keeping it exciting. And this is where having a finite span for that conversation is super important. So you come into a conversation and it's going to end in 15 minutes. Now you feel this flow of someone's moderating this. I need to get as much as I can out of this session in 15 minutes. I know I'm getting a break afterwards. This is the equivalent of the happy hour where you're in a conversation and say, you know what, I'm going to step away and grab a drink or go to the restroom, and then you come back and enter a new conversation. The next piece, again, really important about helping people fit in and helping them kind of reduce that nervousness and getting people on the same page. Let's break the ice. Let's not throw people in a room and say, hey, good luck. I think this is really where we've said you need to, everyone's done these icebreakers. Say your name, say your favorite place to go, say your favorite, color, whatever those things are. And it's just meant to get folks talking. Well, why can't we introduce that in virtual environments? Make it just part of the flow. We come in, let's make it exciting. Let's come up with some cool topics to get this ice broken. And then let's just keep coming up with new topics and new things for people to keep talking about. Sometimes you're going to need them. Sometimes you're not. It just depends on who's in the room. But why leave it to chance? The last piece here is making it easy to get involved. I think that a lot of these things that we run, you think about moderating and who's running it, and it's a full-time job to do that. But I don't think it has to be. Really what we've been trying to focus down on is these sessions need to be easy. If they're not easy for folks to get involved, if they're not easy to set up, people are just going to stop doing them. So how do you set it up so people can just show up and have a good time? That's really the crux of this, right? It's about, you need that regularity. It turns out that, as much as people think, if I join this group, I'm going to find my, a new connection that's really going to be meaningful. And it turns out there's not multiple studies have been done on how we network and how we create connections and friendships. It's not just about the group in which you meet. It's the frequency of groups that you have overlapping. So the easier it is to get involved, the more likely I am to join to new groups. The more groups I'm a part of, the better the chance of me formulating a strong connection. And that's why this becomes so important. It's not just about, I want to make it easy to administrate for my organization or for a large group. It's that if it's not easy, people won't do it. So, I will kind of go back here to talking a little bit about what we've been focusing down on. And I think it's just, the platform that we've really been focused on creating is about tackling this problem, because it's a real problem that, we want folks to find the right place. We want them to go to a space and say, hey, there's this idea of a freshman meet and greet, or there's a chess club or a chess network. So this is something we've, worked on with the university, and saying that let's find the right group of lounges for your team or your organization or your large group. I think the second piece then starts chiseling into, once I now connect with these people, I can set a time for it to start and I don't have to worry about administration. I'm just setting the schedule and people can come and go as they please. Is that people then say, okay, I'm in this room. There's a bunch of other folks here. There's 40 or 80 or 100 people in this room. Now what? There's a lot for me to think about what to do. We want people to create meaningful connections, new connections. So the first thing we let you do is just say, hey, let's go in here. You can go and click on folks and see what they're doing, and you can kind of get a little bit of an idea about them. This is important. So you can just start feeling like you belong. Again, we're trying to bring down those walls. We're trying to get you comfortable. And then you join a chat. And that's really where I think the magic happens, is you say, I'm ready to engage these folks. It's on your terms. And every 2 minutes, you're going to get thrown into a group. It's up to you whether you want to be in that group, or if you want to take a bio break or whatever you need to do during that time. But the key thing is you get pulled into the group. You see a couple of other folks. You can see who's talking and what they're talking about. You have ideas of how to introduce yourself. My name is Joe. My favorite comedian is Jerry Seinfeld, right? And then you kind of go through this list of 3 or 4 things. Everyone gets that conversation started. You see there's a timer. So again, the sense of urgency kicks in. I need to engage these people for the next 15 minutes. Sounds like a long time. We have 6 people in a room. It's a little over 2 minutes of talking apiece. And if it gets a little quiet, that's okay. Let's click on an icebreaker. Let's not make folks more uncomfortable than they already are. Being online makes every one of our conversations harder. There are introverts and extroverts, and we need to know everyone. How do we get to know these folks? And along the way, you're going to meet interesting people. And our platforms today are great. You talk to some folks. Now what? I met someone interesting. I want to stay in touch with Susie, or I want to stay in touch with Joe. How do I do that? Well, you share your information with them. It's like handing over a business card. And it's that simple, is that we are trying to get people together so they can find something in common, so they can see that larger group that they're a part of, see themselves as part of a community. And finally, they can speak to each other, formulate a real connection, and actually connect. So now when I've met you on this platform, I've spoken to you, I've heard you, you've heard me. So when I reach out to you later on and say, you want to grab a cup of coffee, or, you were talking about this thing, I wanted to talk to you about it more. It's not one of those random LinkedIn messages. I'm sure everyone gets these that, you're like, just more spam. You know who this person is. You're actually going to respond. Your connectivity rate goes up really, really high because now we've had a real conversation. But that's what we're trying to create. A meaningful connection. And we just haven't found a great way to do this otherwise. And I think that the other big piece is, how do we now use this? What's the actual use case for all of this? I think that comes right back to what I was talking about a bit earlier here. This is about getting folks to create some regularity. So imagine that you have a mixer every week, or if you had a happy hour every week for the engineering team. Well, now you know who's going to be at this meeting. It doesn't mean just the engineers need to be there. Maybe we have more folks coming in. But every week there's a place for these folks to go, to get to know each other, to learn more about what they're working on with each other, to create that sense of collaboration, to help round out that wheel of how do we connect to one another. I think that originally when we thought up what's 30 Friends going to be, we thought this was going to be a way to connect people because we're all stuck at home. But, I think that really what we started understanding is that there's a lot of ways to connect. There's not a lot of ways to connect with new people, which is why we go to a number of these events. And we want to be sure that we're opening that channel up, that we're making it easier. And fundamentally, we want to really just find a better way to help people join into that conversation, help people really use virtual as a better means to meet a lot of people, and then funnel down. And I think where we're at today is we're kind of at this injunction point where you can imagine online dating back in 2005 to 7. It was a place where you went to find a date, but it didn't feel comfortable. It was kind of odd if you were using online dating. Today, it's the means by which we meet people. I think we're in the midst of a very similar paradigm shift in how do we increase our network socially? How do we increase our network professionally? And virtualization is going to be the way in which this is done. That we can get through a really large funnel and we can quickly sift down to, here's a group of people that help me kind of complete the circle of my network. I'm happy to answer any questions that folks have. or connect even offline. I think this is just an important topic for me. And I thank you all for the time and kind of hearing me out and listening to me on some of what I think is important. Hi, AJ, you might be on mute.
Of course, it's 2020. Of course, I'm on mute. That was so awesome. And to anybody listening, whether it's live or later, this is one of the big reasons why, Amit, you and I spoke when you and I spoke about it, and I said I really need to have you on my summit, because it is that engagement piece, right? It is that meaningful connection in terms of, exactly like you said, is given this virtual environment that, or life that we're living, I think the reason a lot of people are feeling that disconnect is, you hit the nail on the head. We're not able to meet new people in the same ways that we were. And I think you also hit the nail on the head when you brought in the dating apps, the way they were and the way they are now, how that has now become the norm. And as I think about this, I'm just excited that, can you imagine like an entire community of people who are interested in diversity, equity, and inclusion, who are doing the work, for them to have a virtual space online where these conversations can happen on a weekly basis or on a monthly basis. Maybe I'm being biased, but who wouldn't want to be a part of that community?
Yeah, you're 100% right. And as you think through, we have all these structured formats to say, here's the 5 topics we're going to talk about, which is great. And I think we need to have those. But we also need to have that informal communication, which is where you meet the people everyone has a friend or someone they know in their network. They're like, I met so-and-so out of the blue, but what an amazing find that person was. And you need some of that randomness. And I think that's something we're just not getting today, right? It's just, you're meeting exactly who you think you're meeting, and you don't know what you don't know.
Exactly. We've had some great comments here. Sneha said, agreed, we must embrace our new virtual reality. Jenna said, hello, NU alumni. And then, Tiffany is talking, so Tiffany is probably going to connect with you. She says online, but one-on-one. And so we've had, as I'm monitoring all of our feeds, there's been a lot of interest in this and in everything that you've said. And my question, I guess, if anybody has questions, please feel free to drop them in the comments, because we will get to them. And while we're waiting for that, my question to you is sort of, who is this platform? Who is 30 Friends ideally suited for in right now, that you can kind of help launch off right now?
Yeah. So there are a couple of groups that we're already doing some things with. One is universities. We just found that for these new students coming into the university space, what a difficult time this must be, because that's where you go and you're kind of on this mad rush to meet as many people as possible, and now you can't. And so I think that's one group that we've been talking a lot to, and we're doing things with. The second is with organizations, and the big thing here is that formulation of community. It's just missing. So we're setting up things like regular happy hours for them, and very focused, targeted happy hours in different spaces of the world to say, how do we get our teams to know one another? And the third is for larger events. So we're adding a social element to things like holiday parties, and we're doing an event with a relatively large global organization for exactly this purpose. Let's get people together. Let's get them talking. Really, we're trying to just formulate this community for folks. And, it can be a one-off, and I think it's great to use it as a one-off. I think it's almost more important to say, how do we stand this up and make it a conversation? And let's keep coming back and talking about new things and keep adding to that community over time.
Absolutely, absolutely. I know you and I will definitely be talking offline after this about building exactly that for the C3EB audience so that exactly like you said, this is about sustainable conversations, because if we don't have sustainable conversations, we're not going to have implementable solutions.
That's right. Yeah. I think that Tiffany brings up this great point of like, look, the one-on-one is important, but how do I even know who I want to have a one-on-one with? It's so hard because you think of that Venn diagram that everyone's seeing. You know what you know what you don't know, but you don't know what you don't know, and some of that's just rolling dice and randomly meeting so and so. And I talk about my consulting career as a great example of this. People always ask me, how did you come up with clients? I've run into clients sitting next to them on a plane. It's not because I planned it that way. It's not because I had some, great sales strategy. I'm going to sit next to that person. Sometimes you just end up in a position and you're like, that's great. But, you got to meet them first, and then you need to figure out how to strengthen the relationship, which brings me back to that first diagram we talked about of like, you need to meet someone. And then, if you can strengthen that middle part of how you meet new people, you strengthen the formal communications because people know what's going on in the organization or at school and they know what's going on. And you strengthen your ability to have, kind of stronger connections with a small group because you now know more people to add to your different small groups around knitting and football. And you can talk about both.
Right. Absolutely. I appreciate that you brought up, that data about the number of groups and the strength, how relationship strengthening is actually easier when you have similar number of, the people in similar groups across the board, across multiple niches. And Tiffany put another great comment. You never know who you're meant to work with, but you have to be open to forming a connection first. Absolutely. So let me check on, LinkedIn. And I don't, does anyone else have any other questions for Amit Bhambi, the founder and CEO of 30 Friends, this amazing platform to form meaningful connections and strengthening relationships? That's my end. I was like, what just happened? This is the pleasure of working from home and just home offices, right? All of a sudden the ambulance flies by and you're like, yeah, that just got recorded. This is, Amit, this is so fantastic. And it is on a very personal note, this actually really kind of reminds me of how you and I met.
Right. Yeah.
And because of a bus breakdown in the middle of the night, and then and here we are talking about this incredible tool for diversity, equity, and inclusion and meaningful connections. Gosh, like 20 years later?
20, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So it's, I absolutely believe in the strength of forming these meaningful connections every single place that you can, because I think Tiffany's absolutely right. You never know who you're meant to work with. And that's been my experience too. It's really about nurturing that relationship. Last question for you before, we wrap this up. As people are thinking about relationship building and relationship nurturing based on your experience with everything you've built, research, all of that, do you have any tips that you could give to us, other than 30 Friends, of course, but on social media and things like that, in terms of how do we go about kind of getting over that awkwardness, that boredom, that fear, all of that as a person?
Yeah. No. And I think that this is going to, obviously, everyone is going to have their own version of what this looks like. I think that for me, the biggest thing that I've found to be useful, that I always tell folks, is expectation setting. I think it's both personally and for others. The more that you can be open about why you're in a conversation, and what you're expecting to get out of it, the sooner you can find, a way to formulate connection. Right? Because you can put aside some of, the ambiguity of why are you here and why am I here and what are you trying to sell me? Like if I come to you and say, I'm selling this to you, and you say, I'm not interested, we can say, great, let's move on and talk about something else then. And it's amazing. It's this frankness that just it's lost because I think people are so afraid of offending one another. But the best conversations I've had are just saying, it's fine for me to tell you I'm trying to pitch you on something. And if you don't want it, that's perfectly fine too. But at least that way it's not, otherwise it's just in the back of your mind. You can't get over it. You don't know why the other person's there. They don't, everyone's just holding their cards close to chest. And I've had a very hard time with this, over the years. And I want to say in the last 5 years, it's kind of where I realized, what am I hiding? There's no secret here. It's just, this is what I'm doing. Why, let's not be manipulative. Let's just have a conversation, set the expectation early. And, this is why we always focus, this is why I mentioned before, is that nervousness that we all feel when we kind of first meet someone is because we just don't know. Like there's so many unknowns. So the sooner you start hammering through this and getting rid of some of them, the better off you're going to be, whether it's on social media, in person, at a networking event, online. It doesn't matter where you are. And it just, these are the folks that when you look at them, you say, that person's genuine. And that's hard to find. Finding someone genuine is truly a difficult task.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% agreed on that. So with that, for anybody who's watched this, whether you're on YouTube Live, whether you're on Facebook Live, or whether you're on LinkedIn Live watching this, please do us a favor so that we can improve our services as well. You do see a bit.ly link ticking on the bottom. It's a very quick survey, so please fill that out so that we know how much you liked Amit's presentation. And it's a really quick ask that's going to help us improve and build on the C3EB Summit so that we can create meaningful connections with platforms like 30 Friends and with partners like 30 Friends. So we're very, very excited about that. And a huge thank you to all of our in-kind sponsors who are partnering with us, mostly actually technologically, to help us build the C3EB platform into a sustainable, meaningful avenue. So Catchwords, Achieve Podcast, Core Magazine, Aura Nexus, 30 Friends, Wistia, and then of course Nielsen Company. Thank you all for walking the walk with us. And thank you so much, Amit, for taking the time to introduce all of us to this incredible platform. We'll definitely be talking offline to build it for the next summit.
I'm really excited at the opportunity to try new things, and likewise to anyone that's interested in giving it a shot, just email me as well. I mean, I'm an informal guy in that respect. It's just Amit at 30 Friends, or shoot me a link through AJ, because I'm sure that there's a million ways to get in touch these days. But AJ, I really appreciate the time. This has been wonderful.
Absolutely. And for anybody that does want to get in touch with Amit, on the C3EB speaker page, Amit actually has his own page with all of his contact information. So if you just go to c3eb.com and go to the speakers, you will find Amit Bhambi's name there, and all of his contact information as well as the website is there, and you can contact him directly through that. Or I'll be happy to get you in touch with him, so please don't hesitate to reach out to me too. And that's about it for us with Amit. We will be back in 15 minutes with our next session. So let's take a bio break, and we will see you at 12:30.
Thanks, AJ. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Amit.